a panel, and this panel is, I call the retail buyer panel. What led to bringing in retail buyers? Own Adventures, I'm going to make the claim and state the claim. We're the only group that brings in retail buyers, providing the opportunity for women to pitch to the buyers. What happened was, quite frankly, we didn't start off that way. We had the pitching rooms for the investors, we had pitching rooms for the media, and I happened to notice there's a lot of women that were coming to the conferences, and they had products, and they were bringing their samples along. Well, I come from the consumer grocery product background. So I was like, all right, you know what? Here's another barrier that a lot of women encounter, so what can I do about it in helping them grow their businesses? Thus, we created the retail buyer area, where women, when you come to the conference, you bring in your products, you got a minute, couple minutes, pitching your products, and then in the afternoon we have what we call the product pitch tank. Well, the product pitch tank, that's where you have companies like Telebrands, which is as seen on TV. We've got QVC in there. No, not in the pitch tank. We just had you guys in there. But in the retail buyer, we have QVC, we've had Lord & Taylor, we've had these retailers, okay? So basically, for products, for that product-based entrepreneur, it's a similar line track as for investors, because it's just as equally important. You got to get your sales going, and a way to do it is through retailers. Anyway, so I'm going to introduce, first of all, Andrea Paas. She is with Steinreich Communications. They represent Telebrands. And Telebrands is that as seen on TV. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, and then she will introduce the rest of the panel, and we can get going on what you need to do to get distribution or to be picked up by Telebrands. Okay? Yes, I will.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all refreshed after taking a little bit of a lunch break, and I'm very happy to see you and welcome you to the Pitch Your Products to Retail Buyers session. As Melissa said, my name is Andrea Paas, and I'm Vice President, the Consumer Practice Director at Steinreich Communications, which is a full-service public relations firm. We're based in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and we represent all types of clients. We're full service, and we have offices in Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Frankfurt, London, and Tel Aviv. So we can create that global story for any one of our clients. And over my career of 20 years, I have created and implemented public relations campaigns for a wide range of clients, including Telebrands, as seen on TV products, as well as fashion and jewelry companies, food companies, authors, children's products. The list goes on and on. And as a public relations person, my expertise has to be in reaching the press. So I don't need to know all the intricacies of your product, but I need to know how to get the press to want to learn the intricacies of your product. And today, our panel is going to highlight ways that you, as entrepreneurs and small business folks, can get your products onto those retail store shelves. And they each have a unique perspective that they're going to share with you this afternoon. So I'd like to take this opportunity for a moment to introduce each of our panelists before they begin speaking. So all the way at the far end of our panel is Manish Israni, who is the Vice President, Market Research for Telebrands. And Telebrands, based in Fairfield, New Jersey, is the largest marketer of as seen on TV products. Their products are in tens of hundreds of thousands of doors nationwide in 100 countries across the globe. So you might know them from the pet egg. Who has a pet egg? Someone here has to have a pet egg. It takes the calluses off your feet. 45 million of those sold. Currently, the Orgrenic and the Lint Lizard and the Sticky Buddy, just to give you an example. But Manish has over 15 years of experience in market research, marketing, return on investment, and new product introductions. So Manish is responsible for going out and identifying new products for the company. He meets at-home inventors, he researches potential products, he goes to trade shows. He's the guy on the ground meeting and coming up with what could be the next product that will sell millions for Telebrands. So in addition to identifying those products, he handles all of the legal aspects between the inventor, the product, and the company. Our center seat today is held by Dominic Celentano, and those of you who grew up in this area might be familiar with that Celentano name, as I am. He spent his entire life in the retail consumer foods business, holding many positions in his family business, Celentano Brothers. That's the well-known Italian frozen food brand in the Northeast. So growing up, I ate a lot of Celentano, especially like the raviolis. Dom writes the food and beverage guide at about.com, which is a website that receives millions of readers per month. It's owned by the New York Times Company. He focuses on food entrepreneurs, and as the foodpreneur, which I just love that title, Dom, he provides consulting and educational seminars to help entrepreneurs succeed in business. He's also a professor, adjunct professor at King University. He also teaches at St. Joseph's at Fairleigh Dickinson. So he is an expert guru in marketing your food product. And all the way closest to me today is Ellen Smolko. Am I saying that right, Ellen?
Yes.
Very good. She's the president of Foresight Performance, LLC. Over 30 years of experience. She started when she was 5. As a consultant to C-suite level management at Fortune 100 companies. She is involved in organizational development, performance management, change management, process improvement, marketing, learning solutions. She takes all of this knowledge and works with pharmaceutical companies, financial services, data communications, technology, manufacturing. She puts it all together for you, for your company, to create an effective, innovative, cross-media marketing strategy. So Ellen will be able to tell us a little bit about using that to get your products to retail. So that gives you a little snippet of our 3 panelists today, and we're going to begin by each of them addressing you on a variety of different topics that, in the bottom line, will help you get your products to market. So Manish is going to give us that retail perspective from Telebrands, Dom, the entrepreneurial perspective, and Ellen, the path you need to take in marketing and getting that product out to market. So we're going to be casual and informal here. Everyone will talk for a little while, and then we'll get your questions so we can sort of see what can we do to help you move it up a level. So without further ado, Manish, why don't we start at your end of the table? Manish is running.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Melissa, for inviting me here. I appreciate it. It's great to be here. This is actually a very important choice of location for me as I speak here today, because about 24 years ago, I started my college education at Rutgers University in Newark. So it's a very interesting choice of location. I was kind of smiling when I was like, wait, this is where I'm going to be talking to you guys. So it's a great place, of course. So what I'm going to be talking about is how to get products into retail from a direct response marketing standpoint. So when you come up with a product, it can be marketed through a variety of ways. One of those ways is direct response marketing, or SEO and TV marketing. That's what Telebrands does. So what I'm going to talk about is what do retailers and what does Telebrands look for when we're searching for those products and supplying them to retail. So let me start with one very simple statement. One statement that you can keep in mind when looking for products for this business is simple solutions to common problems. That's one of the most simplest ways to describe the kind of products that work in our business. They're simple, they're clever, but they solve a problem that's common enough, it's big enough. So products solve problems, and typically products fall into 3 categories, and I'll let you decide which is the category you want to be in, and that's the category that we look for when we look for products. So you have a product that's a great product. It essentially does solve the problem really, really well, but the problem is just not big enough. That's the first scenario. And I can imagine the other 2 are going to be. The second scenario is that the problem is really huge. It needs to be solved. There is a product out there, but it doesn't do a good job of solving it. That situation won't work either. The third situation is that the problem is widespread. It needs to be solved, and the product does the job really well. So that's the situation we look for. A big enough problem and a product that solves that issue really well. So that's the first thing that you kind of need to keep in mind when you're coming up with products for direct response marketing, because what the type of marketing we do is very broad-based. It targets the masses. It doesn't go after the niches. So in other words, you may have maybe a great baby product, but if it's only applicable to babies that are 1 and under, then that's a very small market. Children is a good market, but babies 1 and under is a very small market. So to give an example of what kind of broad-based appeal we look for. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing is that there are categories that are known to be strong in this type of business. So you have kitchen, you have cleaning, you have storage, beauty, fitness, and pets. So these are the categories that continue to work over and over in this business. So if you have to think of what category to go after, picking one of these categories would be a good way to start. As I mentioned, your products have to have a broad-based appeal. It can be a great product, and there's many ways to market such a product. For example, you have a great baby product that is applicable to a very small demographic, but there's stores and retailers that will take that, and that's another way to go to market. Babies R Us is out there, but for our business, we look for products that have a very mass appeal, broad-based appeal. Pets. There's millions of people who have pets in this country. Beauty, fitness, storage, cleaning, kitchen gadgets, storage and organization. All these things happen to be very, very broad categories. Okay. A product that is innovative and has an exciting demonstration, because keep in mind what we do is when you take your product, we create a TV commercial for it. So the way you make TV commercial exciting is by having exciting demonstrations. So the product needs to be demonstrable. There needs to be a magic demo, a wow demo that should look really good on camera, and so you should look at that and say, I want that now. So that's the kind of demonstration that the product needs to have for it to be successful in a TV commercial. And ultimately, the TV commercial is what builds the brand and the products get to retail. Okay. As far as the number of SKUs, there are products that have a whole line of SKUs, and that happens in other categories. You may have a line of clothing, there's 10 SKUs, But in our business, we prefer less number of SKUs, mostly 1 or 2. But that's really what works in the as seen on TV business. The exception is children's. When it comes to children's products, you can have multiple SKUs and they will do well. An example is Pillow Pets. Everybody knows Pillow Pets probably. So Pillow Pets had 7, 8 SKUs and they were all doing really well. So that's an exception. Where it comes to children, we can have multiple SKUs, but otherwise, we need to have 1 or 2 SKUs at the most. That's easy to manage, and that's what makes the sales really, really great. Value. Pricing perception is very important in this business. We give our consumers a great value, a great product at a great price. So the consumers love it, and the retailers love it. That's the reason why we sell millions of these products. Most of the products are priced between $10 and $20. $10, $14.99, $19.99, $20. There are always exceptions, but I'm talking about the majority of the products fall in the price range. So giving the consumer a great value, they spend $20 or $10, but they still get a high quality product. They don't have to think twice about spending that money. The retailers love it because it increases foot traffic, it generates sales for their other categories. So that's the kind of price range that works best in the as seen on TV business. Okay. Product that's relatively easier to manufacture, because if something is very, very complex to manufacture, that will make the manufacturing process slow. So when we get into the retail rollout, we're literally looking for millions of units a month from the factory. So if the product is extremely complicated, then it's difficult for the factories to meet up with the demand. The demand can be quite dramatic. Just to give you an idea, we were at the peak of Pet Egg, which is the most successful product, we were manufacturing 250,000 units a day. So that's a very high capacity. And if a product lends itself to easy manufacturing, you can accomplish that. If the product is very, very complex, then it's tough to get it right in each batch and make a high volume. That's what we need for our business. Size. So products can be obviously all different sizes. What the retailers prefer in this category, which is as seen on TV, and what Terramax prefers, is products that are relatively small in size. So by small, it's a relative term. By that I mean that you don't want a product that's this big. You better have a product that's a little bit smaller in size. The reason being because retailers have a set shelf space. They measure the sales that's generated in terms of sales per square foot. So when Terramax goes out and puts 10 products there, they look at that space and say, okay, Terramax took 5 feet. What kind of revenue are we generating from this 5 feet? What is the revenue per square foot? So that's why size is important. And there's other ways to market products that are big in size, and that's okay. There's another way In the Asino TV business, we have the short form commercial, which is a 2-minute commercial. Those commercials are typically used for products that are smaller, $10 to $20 in range. There's also the long form commercial, which markets everything from fitness devices to very expensive beauty gadgets. And those products can be big in size. And those products can be expensive as well, anywhere from $50 to $500. So that's just a different way to go to market. When it comes to long form advertising, that product is exclusively sold through the TV for a very long period of time. But when it's short form, the 2-minute commercials, then the product goes to retail very, very quickly, in which case the product needs to be pretty small in size. Patent protection. This is a lot of questions come up about that. Should I get a patent right away? Generally speaking, we do prefer products that have patents and that have good intellectual property. However, it's not always economically feasible to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars before you know that your product has viability in the marketplace, before you know that it's going to be a successful, profit-generating product. In that case, what you can do is go out and get what's called a provisional patent, which is not a very expensive proposition, costs you between $100 and $200. And what it gives you is an opportunity to file a full patent a year from the time that you filed a provisional patent. So it does give you some degree of protection, and you can say patent pending, and it also allows you to not spend too much money, and before you find out if your product is something that's going to sell in the marketplace. So those are the key things that really define our category, and that's all I have. I'll wait for the questions in the end.
Well, yeah, we'll do the questions at the end, but one thing is, if you're looking for that provisional patent, uspto.gov is the site that you'll need to go to for that provisional patent. So Manish, thank you very much for your insight. Dom, we'd like to turn to you and the entrepreneur.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, some of what Manish was saying, it cuts across really all businesses, and as an entrepreneur, you always, whether it's food, whether it's services, whether it's things that Telegram's market is interested in, there's always recognizing the market problem. And that's, one thing that a lot of consumers and a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of my students get confused about, because the market problem isn't like a problem like a flat tire. Market problem is really, what's an unfulfilled need that's out there that I can manage to get. Coming up with the idea that fits the problem is really your next step in the process, and finally how you make money. So that's sort of just the meta of, no matter what business anybody here is in this room, you want to make sure you've thought through that market problem idea. How do I make money? How do I? Food business is interesting because unlike some of the products that you're talking about need to be demonstrable, the flavor of the product's not demonstrable. You eat it and then you decide you like it. And the biggest problem with positioning foods, and just to back up a little bit, and I tend to go off on tangents, so if I'm off too far,
you're good.
But the food entrepreneur's journey is always something like, I make a great product, sell it to my friends, my family, they love it, and then one day somebody says, you really should sell that. And there goes the light bulb. And I see Deborah smiling back there. She's going through that now. And the food entrepreneur then gets stuck in the kitchen, because it's like all about the food. And the reality is that when it comes to distributing product at retail, most buyers will tell you that, okay, you do have a great tasting product, but if it's sitting on the shelf, how does the customer know it tastes good? So taste is one factor of many that comes into play in pitching the retail buyer. So, in the 10 minutes, it's impossible to tell you all of the factors, but I think what I like to always do with clients and people who call to help me is to say, okay, let's talk about the two critical components, which are merchant issues and marketing issues. Now, what does that mean? Let's assume that you have a great tasting product. In fact, most buyers will assume that if they give you an appointment, that the product's going to have some minimal level of acceptance for flavor. The decision, and frankly, for most consumer products, because that shelf-space paradigm, whether it's shelf, whether it's a rack, whatever, stores have limited capacity to carry stuff. And I always like to say, when was the last time you went into, and we'll just use a supermarket, when was the last time you were shopping in the supermarket and noticed that the shelves were empty? And of course, the answer is never. And so the challenge that retailers have is, if I take your products on, what am I going to do to make room for it? Which generally means, who am I going to discontinue to make room for your product? So that's where the merchant issues of a product come in. And the merchant issues are kind of the boring parts of the business. So what are merchant issues? Price is one. You know, we talked about price points. Well, price points are very critical in any retail consumer product. And why? Because consumers have in their mind, and when you think about your own shopping, no matter whether it's food, clothing, etc., and because we generally buy routine, we don't think these things through. But we have price points in our head, which means when we go buy a category, for example. So let's say yogurt, pick yogurt. Yogurt's a fairly big category, but there are price points that if it's too low, the retailer doesn't make money. If it's too high, you're not going to buy it. So buyers immediately start to look at, okay, does your product fit into the price points of the category? Now that means, from a merchant perspective, you as the entrepreneur have to understand what category in the retailer, and let's just use supermarkets, what category do you fit in? Good example is snacks. Years ago, when I was, much younger, snacks were pretty much relegated to chips and pretzels. But today, the snack category is much broader. So, for example, Chobani sort of opened up the possibility of now having a yogurt, Greek yogurt, that is more of a dessert. Snacking today with vegetables that are pre-cut and packaged are redefining the snacking category. So the point is that if you have a product, the first thing you want to think about is that category. Where do I fit? And if categories are big, so I wish Esther was here, she's out there, I guess. But the olive oil category, it's broad. It goes from the very low end $5 quart oils all the way up to the $40 and $50 expensive ones. So clearly, where do you fit? You're not competing with a Barrio, you're competing with somebody else. So price is a merchant issue. Gross margin, very important to know when you're pitching the buyer what your gross margin is to them. Now you might say, well, how do I know what the buyer will be asking for in terms of gross margin? And one of the best ways is you walk into a couple of stores and you'd be amazed to find out the information you can get simply by asking assistant managers, team leaders. So understanding that if a category, so for example, if you have a baked item and it's going to go into the in-store bakery, it's very important to understand that the gross margins in that department are somewhere in the 50% range and up. And partly that's due to the fact that there's spoilage in the department. So any kind of products that have a spoilage factor, the supermarket's going to toss them out, they need to add some additional gross margin in to cover that. So understanding, because you can have a great tasting bakery item, and if the price you're selling it to the supermarkets means they only make 25% gross margin in that department, they'll reject it. They just are not going to go below their minimums. Because buyers have, or they're now called category managers, they have requirements that they have to meet certain targets, and they're not going to have a product that's going to drag that down. Things like, will the product fit on the shelf? Is very important. Because if, for example, if you know your category, and you know how it's merchandised, visually in the store. One thing to determine is how are they merchandising the product. So if your product is packaged in such a way that if it can't be stacked and the retailer needs to stack it, it's not going to be accepted. So understanding what that category looks like, what other competitors are in that category that are competing with you. Things like if it doesn't fit on the shelf, and I guess it's similar to if it's too big, so it's got to fit on the shelf. Can it travel? There are products that are perishable, but they sell. And again, I had a bakery client that was making carrot cakes, and they sold very well. But as they started to extend their product line, whatever they were working on, I won't say who the retailer was, said you have to have a minimum of 2-week shelf life, no less, because even though you sell at a rate of X, by the time you make it, ship it to us, it gets transshipped from our distribution center to the store. By the time the store packs it out, the consumer buys it, we have to have at least 2 weeks. If you can't maintain that, you can't take your product. So those are what I call merchant issues. Oh, something as simple as, bottled water. Well, that's not shipped to the store in individual bottles. It's shipped in some kind of master pack. Master pack can make or break the sale of a product to a retailer because if your category is a low volume category, so let's say we'll take a high-end oil, and those products typically only sell 1 unit per store per week. You can't have a master pack that's 24. Why? That's almost half a year's supply of product. It's going to sit on the shelf. They're not going to want something packed that big. So those are all the merchant issues. Those are the I call them the boring things. I teach some of my students about buying and merchandising. I said, these are the things that you would never guess that would come into play, particularly for food, but they do. Then you've got the other side, which is the marketing side, which is, okay, if you have all of the things lined up to get on the shelf, then they really want to know how are you going to get it off the shelf. And in supermarkets, in-store support, point of sale, point of purchase, is critical. What's that mean? It means being able to support your products with sustainable promotions. We all buy on promotion. Every one of us looks for deals. And today with smartphones, pricing transparency, that's the fancy name for it, is critical. I mean, how many people have gone to like a Best Buy and used their phone to be shopping while they're in the store? It's happening at food now. So promotions are critical. End displays, off-shelf displays, tags, participating in a store's frequent buyer program, for example. All of these things factor in to the side of the marketing, really. How will I support the product? So when you think about your product, think about your business, whether it's food, and that's my expertise, but even if it's not, when you get beyond the product, think about what's going to motivate the buyer, and that's really, do I have all the merchant issues lined up, and do I have all of my marketing support lined up? If I do, I have a high degree of likelihood of getting somebody to say yes to put me in distribution.
Okay, thank you, Don. Very, very informative.